Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. So what do you got for us?
The place we'll be in today uses the incineration of their trash and daily waste to convert into electricity, reducing their trash volume by 90%.
Virginia.
Black coral is a gem that they use. It's not a mineral. It's actually an animal related to a sea anemone, and they use it to make jewelry.
You thought I was going to guess from that?
This place has a unique language made up of a 12-letter alphabet.
Australia.
Dozens of movies were filmed here, the original Jurassic Park movie and Raiders of the Lost Ark, to name a few.
New Mexico.
This place is made up of 137 volcanic islands.
Hawaii!
Yes. Today we'll be in Hawaii, more specifically, Oahu.
Woohoo!
Our win is extremely current, and by extremely current, I mean
happening now.
He was just sentenced on June 3rd, 2025. On July 12th, 2024, the phone of Frances Tapaz Andrean chimed with a strange text message from her married daughter, 19-year-old Mischa Johnson. Another chime with another strange text from Mischa, this time went to her sister. The texts were strange and nothing like Mischa. So who is Mischa Johnson? She's a 19-year-old Oahu native. She's also an Army wife. Her husband, Private First Class Dewayne Arthur Johnson II, was from Maryland prior to joining the Army.
He did it.
Dewayne was stationed in Oahu in 2023. He met Mischa shortly after arriving in Hawaii.
Well, that moved quickly.
The couple, they fell madly in love and got married in November of 2023. So if you're doing the math in on that, that's just 2 months after they met. They got married. In 2024, he's 29, she's 19.
Oh.
Yeah. I realized that I have a very strong opinion about age differences with marriages.
Interesting.
And it's not that it's 10 years apart. He's in almost 30 and she's still a teenager.
But fellers don't mature as quickly.
I know, but I feel like that's so young for somebody to go get married to somebody they don't know, you know?
You're talking to somebody who got married when they were 18.
Yeah, I know. I realize that.
And then also, second husband, an age gap, which...
Well, but I don't think the age gap as you get older, I feel like there's a big gap in maturity between a 19-year-old and a 29-year-old, but a 29-year-old and a 39-year-old?
I think maturity-wise, it just comes down to maybe she was a middle child or just like super mature, doing a whole lot. That 19, she could be 19 and way beyond her years. I've met 20-year-olds that seem like they're still 12. So, but usually those are the fellers. And it's just, I could see her be on the same maturity level as he is. If she, like, let's say she's been working since she was 12 or 13, she's going to have more life experience and knowledge of the world by 19, rather than some of the people out there who've never had a job until they were adults. And I could see it either way.
Yeah. Well, in 2024, she was 19, he was 29. He was an Army Scout assigned to the 3rd Infantry Brigade Combat Team, 25th Infantry Division. And Mischa and Dewayne, like I said, it was a whirlwind romance. And Mischa's mother said that Dewayne and Mischa were tied at the hip, head over heels in love. So on July 12th, when Mischa called her mother-in-law to have a chit-chat about things, and after that, she sent some weird text messages to her friends and family. You know, they were like, what the heck's her problem? But then on July 31st, 2 weeks later, a devastated Dewayne reported his wife, who was 6 months pregnant with their little girl, was missing. Search parties gathered to support Dewayne in search of his wife. And since Mischa was last seen on the Army base, the Department of the Army Criminal Investigation Division began an investigation into where she could be. They also offered a $10,000 reward with any information that would lead to the whereabouts of Mischa. Obviously, we know how this works, right? The police always look at the spouse first, and then they work their way out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they look at like your cell phone records, and they learn that the last person that Mischa talked to was Dewayne's mother, who, if you remember, I said she called her the 2 weeks prior on July 12th. Apparently that chit-chat was about how devastated Mischa was to learn that her dearly devoted husband was cheating on her.
Oh.
Dewayne came home livid with his wife after he received a call from his mother, who was angry with her son for running around on his pregnant wife. So at that point, the special agent...
I'd be curious. I know she's our victim, but what solution do you think you're gonna have his mother tell him? Like,
I have no idea.
You better quit it and stick it out. Like, I would expect that to be the beginning of the end.
I think him cheating is the beginning of the end, but it made me think of...
Yeah, but calling his mother would be like you just lit a match of...
I realize she's 19 and she's the victim, and I'm not saying this to upset anyone, and I know this is a very fresh case, but it seemed very immature to tattletale to his mom.
Unless it's like culturally.
Yeah. I mean, it breaks my heart for her that, being 6 months pregnant and newly married, that...
Well, yeah, he was just sticking it in wherever.
Yeah, I mean, that's disgusting, but...
Was that why they got married? Because she was pregnant?
No. I did the math. They were married for like a month or two before she got pregnant. Yeah, because they got married in November and she was 6 months pregnant in July. So, I mean, she got pregnant in like January, possibly Christmas. So, after learning that Dewayne was cheating on his wife from his mother, a special agent began monitoring Dewayne's online activities, and the agent found Dewayne was messaging not one woman, not two women. You know what? Not even 3 women, but 18 different women.
Wow, he casts a wide net.
He sure does. I was telling this case to my boy a couple days ago, and he was like, it's on an island. He's texting all the women.
There are a lot of people on Hawaii.
I know, but it was just, oh, that boy. It made me laugh.
Maybe suggest he travel.
Realizing things weren't all sunshine and roses, the Army investigators searched the Johnson home to look for any clues as to where Mischa might have disappeared to. Like maybe she left him.
Yeah, she got upset because he's texting 18 people and she's pregnant with their child.
Yeah, and she just packed her shit and wanted to be left alone. So they were like, well, let's go see if we can find some clues. And a major shock came to Mischa's family when the investigators found Mischa's blood, and a lot of it, under the floorboards of their apartment. Which, man, they must have been tearing that place apart. That they went under the floorboards. They also found other forensic evidence in their house, and that led to Dewayne Johnson being taken into military custody on August 19th, 2024. Now with Dewayne in custody, they decided they're going to look through his phone. And they found images of Dewayne with another woman kissing and performing sexual acts.
I don't understand people who need to photograph the events.
I have no idea.
I guess it's that way they can relive it. But so many cases that it just like you go through somebody's camera roll and maybe I just take too many pictures of my dogs and lizards I find outside, I guess is what it boils down to. But I don't understand all the selfies and the...
No.
I'm at Walmart. Let me take a picture next to this tomato.
Aside from those odd pictures, I also don't think Jason would be too up for me being like, you know what? Hold on.
Hold that pose.
Hold that. Let me take a selfie.
Now look this direction. Capture the light.
Right. It's whatever. So there was also digital evidence suggesting that Dewayne and one of the many women he was talking to
were
planning on getting married and moving in together and starting a family. And it's like, okay.
Well, he's already started that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just got like a weird fantasy of like those starting out. He really liked the honeymoon so much he wanted to do it 18 more times.
Well, after his arrest, he was initially charged with providing false statements, obstruction of justice, and after going through his phone and his computer, he was also charged with production and distribution of child pornography.
He didn't say any of these ladies were underage.
I know. I tried my best to find details on the child pornography stuff, but the military's keeping...
One of them was probably 16 or 17.
Probably. That's what I figured. Or I figured that if he met her in 2023, if she was 19 when she went missing, maybe she was 17 when they first started.
Oh, I thought it was like they met and then it started rather than...
Well, I don't know when he was chatting with other people, but if he had any naked pictures of her when she was still Like if she was 17 and then just turned 18 when they met.
You're talking about his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought you said they kind of met and it was a whirlwind, that they didn't know each other for very long.
Fine, the math doesn't add up.
But I would say since he's talking to 18 other people, it's absolutely possible.
Somebody's a child?
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
So is talking to 18 women while your pregnant wife is just doting along.
Yeah.
I hope he has many lovers in jail.
Dewayne decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and confess, but only if you work out a deal with me first. So he told the Army investigator on July 12th, 2024, the couple were at their home on, I think it's Schofield Barracks, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, my bad, where they were having an argument about Mischa calling Dwayne's mother to tell on him for being a lying, cheating scumbag. Dewayne admitted he and Mischa got into a heated argument and things escalated quickly. He told the investigators he struck his 19-year-old pregnant wife with a machete that he kept in their bedroom.
Why do they have a machete in an apartment?
I don't know.
Like, we've got 3 machetes, but we've got 6 acres and vines, so it's a necessity. But, I don't know. I've never had a machete in an apartment.
I don't know why you'd keep a machete in your bedroom.
For protection. Although that even still sounds like a weird, like...
They're on the military base in an apartment. I don't think they need a machete.
I don't think any apartment you need a machete. I would think a bat, but a machete sounds very, like, be prepared to move after this because the cleanup is going to be pretty disgusting. But he hit her how many times with a machete?
I didn't tell you that yet. So he struck her with the machete. He said he struck her in the side of her head, and he explained how the machete became lodged in her temple, and eventually after freeing the weapon from her skull, he began hacking at his wife in an attempt to dismember her.
I'm surprised they only found blood in the floorboards.
Well, they found other evidence as well, but the Army is keeping real close tabs on what information is released, and I think it's because of the level of violence, and it makes the military look real bad.
So I chopped up a watermelon yesterday, and the noise of when I got the blade stuck of trying to get it out is what is echoing in my brain. That's really disgusting, and also throwing it out there to the world. I don't want to die a macheted death.
Well, Dewayne found the task of dismembering with a machete extremely difficult. He made attempts to slice his wife's remains unsuccessfully, and he was just making a bigger mess of things. So Dewayne cleaned himself up and left the house. He went to the store and purchased a chainsaw to aid in the task of dismembering his wife and unborn child.
What?
Yeah.
I feel like that would be clue number 1. Where are all of his neighbors? Because there shouldn't be a chainsaw being used in an apartment.
Right.
Are you sure it was a chainsaw? I feel like a skill saw would be a better option and quieter.
The Army said it was a chainsaw.
All right.
He admitted he successfully severed Mischa's arms and legs and torso. He did not disembowel her. He left her torso intact, probably because she was pregnant, and he knows that your intestines are a lot.
He already had a mess to clean up.
Yeah, but could you imagine intestines?
No.
You know those cans?
I will not. I already was envisioning the noise with the machete stuck in her skull. I'm not envisioning intestines flopping out, Andrea.
So any of the other cases we've ever done where somebody...
Why are you continuing?
Where somebody disembowels someone, I picture like those snakes in a can thing.
Unsubscribe!
Those snakes in a can gags where you pop the lid off and like all this material of a snake pops out. I picture that, but intestines.
That's because you've been sick for a real long time.
Well, anyway, he then placed Mischa's body parts into 3 separate trash bags. He then loaded the bags into his vehicle and drove around to the different dumpsters on base to dispose of the bags containing his wife and child.
He's such a piece of shit.
He's such a piece of shit. He then admitted to texting Mischa's family in an attempt to drive a wedge between Mischa and her loved ones, buying himself time. Because if you remember my hints in the beginning...
I thought he's the one who reported her missing.
He does, but he waits 2 weeks because this all happened July 12th.
Oh.
And he doesn't report her missing until July.
He wanted the trash picked up.
Well, if you remember my hints in the beginning, Hawaii has a program called Honolulu Program of Waste Energy Recovery, nicknamed H-Power. H-Power's...
You said that in the beginning?
H-Power's program means Dewayne knew the trash would be collected and incinerated almost immediately. therefore destroying all evidence and the remains of Mischa and the baby. So he gave it 2 weeks before he reported her because by then he knew the trash was going to be incinerated. Yeah, it's disgusting. Private First Class Johnson pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter. That was the deal he worked out. He also pled guilty to obstruction of justice and providing false statements.
They should charge him with the death of his child now.
He was also charged with that.
But no, let him plead for his wife's murder, but then get him on the other one.
Well, before being sentenced, this piece of trash apologized to Mischa's family and his loved ones, his colleagues, and the local community.
Oh, fuck off.
He blubbered as he said, "My wife didn't deserve that.
No shit.
She wasn't trash. I hate myself for what I did every day. I love Mischa and my child more than myself.
No.
They both deserve so much more.
Mm-hmm.
I failed as a husband. I failed as a father. And I failed as a man. I'll forever be sorry."
I don't believe he was sorry at all. He was sorry that he didn't get away with it.
Oh, for sure. And the prosecutors were like, yeah. So you recorded yourself having sex in your marital bed shortly after you murdered Mischa and your unborn daughter. So,
Ew, shortly after.
yeah.
With himself?
What? He was having sex with a lady.
Well, he said it just seemed like he wouldn't have that kind of energy after all the cleaning.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It was within the 2 weeks of her going missing. He's off diddling women in their bed.
Well, in fairness, he was doing that while she was alive as well, so he didn't change any of his routines.
Yeah, but he wasn't even... There was no sign of remorse, you know? Like, he's just a piece of shit.
But he was doing that while she was alive. Why would he have any sort of regrets after the fact?
Fine.
He was porking everybody.
I know.
And as your son would believe, he was having sex with all the women in Hawaii.
So, under the terms of that voluntary manslaughter deal, the more severe charges, including murder and killing his unborn child, were dismissed.
That's disgusting.
It's so disgusting. And on June 3rd, he was sentenced to the maximum of just 15 years for the manslaughter charge of Mischa, 15 years for the manslaughter charge for his unborn child, and 8 years for the obstruction of justice charge, totaling 23 years in prison. If you notice, the math isn't mathing right there, because 15 plus 15 plus 8 does not equal 23. You would be correct.
They're not consecutive.
The prosecutors agreed that the 2 terms for both manslaughter charges would be served concurrently since the singular act killed both his wife and his child. I was like, ugh. So in my opinion, that's the same idea as a drunk driver getting in the car and killing a whole family that they plow into. So why... That's still a whole bunch of people murdered. It should be a murder charge for each one. But they're like, no, since he killed the wife, he killed the baby. It's disgusting. So he was also demoted to a private and dishonorably discharged from the Army on June 5th, 2025. He will serve out his sentence in the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And also, while Dewayne was charged with the child pornography offenses, those charges were not among the counts that he pled guilty to. The specifics of these charges and whether they resulted in separate legal proceedings, it's not publicly available. The Army's Office of Special Trial Counsel has not provided further details on the outcome of the child pornography charges, but it would appear they were dismissed along with the other more serious charges. So the military received a lot of flack over the lack of consequences, or more so the minimal consequences for such a vicious murder. And it was explained under the military's criminal code, no matter how violent the crime or the evidence that they found supports the crime of voluntary manslaughter, and it's insufficient to prove the required intent for the murder beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Meaning it looked like a crime of passion.
Well, and they have nothing to prove otherwise, so they're kind of in a bind because they can't do the whole, no, we're not going to let you plea on this. We're going to go to trial with nothing.
Right. And the Army also said pursuing a more severe charge of murder without the victim's body is even more difficult to prove.
Yeah.
Because essentially, if he didn't confess, they can just guess that he murdered her by the amount of blood and tissue and things that were recovered.
Right, but it would be a real tough sell if you wanted to try to pretend he doesn't know anything.
Right. Sadly, the remains of Mischa and her unborn daughter, who would have been named Armani Katana, have never been found and are presumed to have been incinerated. So that kind of piqued my interest. And I know you're going to rip apart my statistics, and I tried to find statistics for all kinds of shit. So you know what? Fuck you in advance.
I'm ready.
I know you are. The Army has been under fire in the recent years for failing to track domestic abuse cases. And I picked a singular year. So fuck you if you want other years. I really dug deep on my statistics, Claire.
I'm prepared to punch holes in them. No pun intended.
In 2023, there were roughly 750 military bases throughout 80 countries. There were nearly 27,000 reports of domestic violence and child abuse incidents reported among the military branches. Only 14,000 met the DoD, or Department of Defense's, definition of abuse. That's an average of 18.8 domestic abuse cases per...
Hold up, though. That seems wildly low if you do how many people are in the armed forces in those 80 bases.
countries.
Yeah.
It's 750 bases.
Well, potato, how many service members is that out of?
Oh, you suck.
I'm surprised. This is always our argument with your statistics. I don't know when you throw out like that 28,000 out of how many?
Out of everybody in the military, okay?
Which is how many?
Oh, God, you're fucking annoying as shit.
No, so that, in my mind, plays a role. If you've got 1 in a million or 1 in 10, though that ratio is my determining factor of, oh my God. If it, like, I know it's more than 50,000, but if you were to tell me there were only 50,000 soldiers that was from, and 27 of them had a domestic violence issue in 2023, that's horrifying. That's almost, that's a majority.
Okay, suck a dick. But there's roughly 1.29 million active duty troops and 767,000 in the reserves. So we're going to go with 1.29 million in all the military branches combined.
They're doing fantastic.
Okay, we'll tell that 27,000 that reported being abused, and then having of those 27,000, the military being like, you know what? We are only going to take 14,000 of these seriously, and then dividing that average, it's about 18 per base. I tried to do the breakdown for each branch specifically, but they claim they can't do that because they said there's a lack of public breakdown that's like accessible to the public, as well as inconsistency in reportings. Those are their top 2 excuses for why they don't separate it per branch. However, there are claims that the Army has the highest rate of domestic violence, followed by the Marines, Navy, and then Air Force.
And also, so police department, first responders, all of those, because they have a high-stress job.
Keeping the entire military abuse average per base for 2023 was about 36 incidents being reported. It was like 35.981 or something. So basically 36 incidents being reported, and only 18.8 meeting the DoD's definition of abuse.
So I'd be curious on that one, because like for somebody to get a call and like maybe it was the yelling of like,
right.
I think that's why the criteria of like you can have somebody who punched a hole in the wall, but they didn't punch the person, but
right.
It's still a domestic violence call.
So the average being 36 incidents, whatever they were, and only 18.8 meeting the definition of abuse. The base where Dewayne and Mischa were living, there's roughly 16,800 for a population on that base. 6,000 were active duty soldiers. In 2023, the Army did an audit of 10 bases, and their base was one that they did the audit on, and it was the worst for domestic violence. They had 307 domestic incidents reported compared to the average of 35. I was like, that's absolutely nuts. And of those 307 reports, only 41 were actually reported to law enforcement. I was like, that's pretty shitty. So go ahead, pick it apart.
I feel like I've already said my piece of like, I don't know.
Well, so I was trying to figure out like what's the average of abuse, but the military bases are so different in size because it depends on their location, how many soldiers there. So it makes it really difficult to really like how many people are getting abused based off of like the specific bases. So that's where it was just the generalized. If you do the average of 750 bases and these are the average, that's what it breaks down to. So for them to have 307 incidents of abuse, And the military did come back and say out of the audit of 10 bases, they were way worse on domestic violence.
I'd be curious what 10 bases, though.
That wasn't public.
But I also find out of over 1 million service members, 14,000 is actually way lower than I would have guessed.
Well, 14,000 or 27,000, whatever, that is low. But then also keep in mind, of that 1 point whatever, how many of them aren't with their significant others because they're deployed somewhere?
What?
Like, they're not in the country, you know? If they're out of the country.
Oh, you're saying it shouldn't count because they're not there.
Yeah,
so
not
they're
all
not being abused.
Yeah, they can't be home to be abusive because they're not around.
Maybe that's why the number is so staggeringly low.
I'm going to say it is. I did also read that soldiers that are struggling with PTSD tend to be higher on that abuser level, which makes sense.
You don't say.
But that's all I've got, and I feel really bad for her family because
yeah,
they're never going to have any real closure.
No, I feel like since he was a PFC, he had been fairly new to the military, but do you have anything on? Was that like nearly his first duty station? Because I'd be curious if he had gone on any deployments, but I think he couldn't have been in for very long to have any sort of trauma. My brain was thinking in terms of like a first sergeant or somebody who's been in the military long enough to have had that trauma and coming back and freaking out.
Yeah. So it says he enlisted in 2022. He completed basic combat training and advanced individual training, or AIT, at Fort Moore, Georgia in November of 2022 and was assigned to the 25th Infantry Division, serving as a cavalry scout starting in June of 2023. And since he met her, I'm going to say he got stationed in Hawaii right away.
Because he must have entered late.
Yeah. And then he ended up being demoted to private.
Right. Well,
he went from an E3 to an E1.
Thank you.
Well, not everybody's as familiar with the military as you are. I did have to look it up. I just think it's really sad.
It's sad for her, the child, and also that he'll eventually one day breathe fresh air.
Yeah, it's disgusting. I also tried to look and see when he'd be up for parole, because you know how like you get time off at a regular prison when you've been a good boy or a good girl. But military don't tell you stuff like that. They want you to mind your own business. Stay out of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.